home insurance, one of the biggest headaches for homeowners. It's confusing, it's expensive, and in Florida, it's not an option. Premiums are rising, companies are pulling out, and even basic coverage isn't always that basic. If you live in Florida or thinking about moving here, this episode is super important. And today, I'm not doing this alone. I invited someone that I trust and is true expert in the game. One of the best in the business when it comes to helping people to protect their home in the right way. And together, we break it down the Florida home insurance into a powerful series that cuts through the noise. No fluffy, just straight talk and smart strategy. And here is what we're gonna cover. Why home insurance is getting so expensive in Florida and what you can do about it. And it's not just about hurricanes. What does home insurance really cover in Florida? I will share some surprising things most people assume are covered, but they are not. And yes, how to find affordable coverage in Florida. It's possible, but only if you know where to look and how to make your home more insurable. Plus, how insurance choice can impact your mortgage and why your lender might say no to your policy. If we haven't met yet, I am Michelle Beatty, a real estate licensed professional and team leader here in the vibrant Miami area. My team and I are passionate about helping people like you to buy, to sell, invest, and relocate to this incredible city. So whether you buy, already own, or just curious, this series is for you. It's a real talk, real example, and practical advice for life in the Sunshine State. Subscribe, hit the bell button so you don't miss any part of the series, and drop a comment if you had any experience with home insurance in Florida, good or bad. I would love to hear your story and maybe even include it in one of the episodes. Let's get into it. Christian, thank you so much for being here today. Do you want to introduce yourself real quick?
Yes, thank you, Michelle. My name is Christian Hervia. I'm a franchise owner with John Galt Insurance. I've been in the insurance industry for 15 years, been a franchise owner for 5 years. We specialize in homeowners insurance here in the state of Florida.
You know, Chris, a lot of people are shocked when they move to Florida and see how high the home insurance is compared to other states. What caused price goes up so much over the last 10 years?
That's a great question, and it's a very loaded question. So it is different from any other state in the United States. Because we are Florida, we're surrounded by water. We have an average 28 to 30 named storms on a yearly basis during hurricane season. Mind you, hurricane season is anywhere between 6 to 10 months, depending on how far they stretch it out. We did a little bit of a graph and kind of took a look at what has been the biggest change. It's been a couple factors. The named hurricanes hitting the state of Florida, like Irma, Ian, they've affected substantially because anytime that a hurricane hits our state and it damages people's homes, we're talking about hundreds of thousands of dollars. A person's roof rips off, that's $20,000, $30,000, depending on the type of roof they have, shingle, tile, metal. So you take that factor of the damages from the insurance. Then you also take the factor of insurance fraud. And there has been a large case of insurance fraud ongoing for quite a while, but it really started peeking its head in around 2015. That's when we started to see a lot of issues with homeowners insurance and fraud. There's been a constant litigation against insurance companies. I'll give you an example. We had a client a couple of years ago, had a water leak in the kitchen. That water leak turned into a $100,000 claim. Wow. It was being pushed by a public adjuster. Then you take the factor of inflation. In about 2020, this is where it started to get really crazy. We started seeing a high inflation for building costs and building materials. So you asked me, how does that affect insurance? Well, insurance companies here in the state of Florida will only insure the replacement cost of a home. So if on a yearly basis, I'm gonna use a 2x4 as an example, piece of wood, 2x4, in 2020 was about $2. In just 3 years, that 2x4 went from $2 to $9. So that is the increase. So now you think about just inside your roof, hundreds of 2x4s that you have, masonry, everything else is gonna increase the dwelling coverage amount. In 2020, your homeowner's insurance policy, I'm using a very broad example, a 1,500 square foot home, let's say in Miami Lakes, had a replacement cost of $250,000 in 2020. And today in 2025, that home has a replacement cost of $500,000.
Wow.
a 100% increase. And that's what we've seen. Between 2015 and 2025, we've seen 100+% increase in homeowners insurance rates and the replacement cost of homes. And so you add the factor of 28 named storms on a yearly basis, right? And we probably get hit with 2 or 3. I remember one storm that hit us twice. You get that factor, you get the fraud factor, and then you get the inflation for building materials and building costs. That is a recipe for disaster. And so that's why you see your replacement cost of your home skyrocket. That's why you see your insurance go higher and higher on a yearly basis, because you cannot keep that $250,000 on that home, because the inflation is going to continue rising and rising and rising. When 2022 homeowners insurance prices increased 33%, 2023 40%. So is the insurance going to go down? Unfortunately, insurance is not going to go down. What it's going to do is going to level out. And once it levels out, we try to help people understand their homeowners insurance, what coverages they have, and where they can save money.
Chris, you said fraud. Can you elaborate more on that?
Absolutely. Fraud has been a real big factor for homeowners insurance. One of the biggest fraudulent parts has been the amount of money being paid out, either through litigation, insurance lawyers, or public adjusters. And I'm not saying that insurance lawyers are bad or public adjusters are bad. No, I've worked with great lawyers and I've worked with great public adjusters that do the right thing for the client, because they're there to maximize an individual's payout to help them become whole again. That's what insurance is there for. Whenever you have a loss, it's there to make you whole. So there is good people in the industry. There is some other bad people. For instance, by law, you have 4 years to file a claim. So you'd have public adjusters that would really go into a client's home, and the home have maybe like a little bit of a leak on the roof. They destroy the roof and like the inside of the roof. They would also destroy inside the home. I've heard of people kicking holes in the walls, things like that, to make the loss bigger than what it was. So it would turn a $10,000 loss turn into $50,000, $60,000. And then the insurance company would have to pay that loss, also have to pay the public adjuster or pay the insurance lawyer. And that became a trend. Like, it started happening a lot more. Another example for fraud is water loss. In the state of Florida, one of the biggest losses is water losses from within the home. The leaky pipe, leaky faucet, things like that. So you would get somebody, instead of coming and fixing that leak and repairing, removing the stuff, they would completely get a brand new kitchen. So then you go from having a $5,000 water loss to, again, $50,000, $60,000, and then they would try to push this as much as possible. And hence, that's some of the fraud that came about. To mediate this, what insurance companies have done now is understanding that water loss in the state of Florida is a huge factor. They started offering limited water. Probably about 90% of all companies offer limited water damage coverage of $10,000 minus the deductible. So when the insurance company started kind of making that adjustment, so did the lawyers and so did the public adjusters, and it became a real big fight. We've had a case where there was an insurance payout for $50,000, and the litigation fees that went to the attorney and everything else associated was well over $100,000.
Wow. Chris, I heard that some insurance companies actually left Florida. That sounds very scary if you're a homeowner. What made these companies decide to stop offering coverage here?
It's a great question. So I'm going to use a United Property and Casualty as an example. Ian, it was a devastating hurricane that left a lot of damage. One of the biggest issues is that we live here in Florida, because we are a coastal state, is having hurricanes hit us, right? And Ian hit us in a specific part where United Property and Casualty had a lot of policy, and they became insolvent. Insolvency means that they weren't able to pay out all of the claims. And so because they weren't able to pay out all of those claims, that's when you have FIGA, which is a Financial Insurance Guarantee Association, that's backed by the state of Florida and the government, come in and kind of help them. But it did bankrupt that company, and that was one of the ones that left. We had some Federated National left, another one that came and saw us. We had Weston. That was more due to fraud from what we heard. And so this is why it is is so critical to have this new legislation passed to be able to help the insurance carriers, because if we have a hurricane like Andrew in 1992 hit us again, that's going to be devastating for insurance carriers and for, homeowners as well. Absolutely, it's going to be devastating. Nobody wants damage on their home. Nobody wants to lose a home. God forbid that does happen. You need to make sure that your homeowner's insurance can get paid out. This also leads to kind of what's going on with Citizens, which is a government program in the state of Florida that offers homeowners insurance to anybody if you now meet their certain criteria and guidelines. In the past couple of years, we had seen an increase in the policies that were being added to Citizens. It is not good because, one, they're government insurance, and you really don't want to mix private companies with government, because it's just not going to be a good thing for you. As they were getting more and more policies, yes, their rates were lower than what the private market was in, but now the risk factor is increased. We were on some calls and we had gotten some information from Citizens that if there was a devastating hurricane, they might not have the money or the funds to be able to cover everybody that they currently had as clients.
Christian, when I was helping my clients to, give you the guidance to get the insurance, it seems that citizen insurance was like the only option at a certain point.
Yes, in many cases, Citizens is going to be the only option. The factors that lead to that are age of home, age of roof, location, and replacement cost. For instance, the replacement cost that we spoke about, that 1,500 square foot home with $250,000 of dwelling coverage, that home right there, if it was close to the coast, 2 miles within the coast, it's what we call in the wind pool, which means it's more susceptible to hurricane damage, right? So their prices are going to be higher. Now, if it has a bad roof, or not a bad roof, let's just say 20-year-old shingle roof, built in 2005. According to insurance companies, the maximum life expectancy that they'll cover is 20-year-old roofs. So if your roof is on that 18, 19-year-old range, they're not going to want to accept it, because you only have, according to their underwriting guidelines, 2 or 3 years left on that roof. And now you can say, oh, well, but the roofer says, it's a good roof. Yeah, absolutely. You might have a really good roof, but not for the insurance companies. They're not willing to take on that risk, because they know that you're at the end of that life expectancy. So it goes back to Citizens. Now, they're the only ones that can insure it. And, when you buy a new home, you want to be able to move into the home, and the first thing you don't want to have to do is shell out $30,000 for a new roof, right? Because you just spent a significant amount of money trying to acquire the property, probably made one of the biggest investments in your life, and now you have to drop another 30 grand to put on a roof. So hence now you start with Citizens and you continue with Citizens all the way through.
It finally feels like we're getting some good news in 2025 with these new reforms. What changed in 2024 that helped slow down the price increase?
There's been a couple of different factors that were put into legislation to be able to level out the prices and potentially provide homeowners lower rates for homeowners insurance. The first one that we see was the elimination, assignment of benefits. Back in the day, you would actually give your policy over to a public adjuster, and they would file claims on your behalf and things like that. So we've eliminated that in part of the insurance contracts. That's really helped out with the fraud. Second reforms that we see out there is the repeal of attorney fees. No longer will the insurance company be responsible to pay attorney fees. Now each individual has to pay their own attorney fees for that litigation that they go into. So that's a lot of relief on the insurance carrier's point of view. So the next one would be Citizens Government Property Insurance Corporation, their eligibility factor. So they've partnered up with private market insurance carriers. When they're offering you a quote, for instance, you're going to go purchase a new property, we have to go through a rating factor to see if there's any private market insurance company that's offering you a rate that's 20% higher than what Citizens is offering you. You must take that price. You will not be able to take the Citizens factor. Absolutely incredible that they're doing this because they're forcing people now to go into the private market. Now that's going to save a lot of money down the line because now private market insurance companies are getting that potential client and Citizens is eliminating that person off their books. What's happening a couple years ago with Citizens is that they would bring you into their program, and then 2 months later you would be depopulated into a private market insurance company. And you still have fees for everything that's associated with processing, accepting, underwriting, all of that. That's being eliminated now at the beginning. Another piece of legislation that was passed was the Insurance Premium Tax Relief, or HB 7073. Basically, this implemented a 1-year waiver of insurance premium taxes on homeowners and flood insurance policy. This specific initiative is expected to provide approximately $500 million in insurance relief for homeowners.
When it comes to buying home insurance, what are some of the biggest traps or red flags buyers should watch out for, especially those really cheap policies, what people often think is covered but actually isn't?
The first thing that you want to look into is, does your policy cover hurricane coverage? About 98% of mortgages, when going through the home buying process, first-time home buying process, is going to require you to have hurricane coverage. The hurricane coverage is extremely important. Look for the percentages. What percentage your deductible? 2% or 5%. That deductible is usually eliminated from the coverage A dwelling. That's where the insurance companies are going to say, okay, 2% of 250,000 or 5% of 250,000. That's your deductible. And it's a very large number, so you have to remember this deductible is what's going to be removed from the check if you ever have to use your homeowner's insurance. When I discuss policies with my clients or quotes, I make sure that we look at the deductibles. We also then look at water damage coverage. Water damage coverage from within the home is extremely important because about 95% of homeowners insurance carriers will only offer you a limited water damage coverage. And that is for leaky faucets, toilets, things like that. And there's also a deductible associated. So I'd look into what kind of water damage coverage I have with the home. Now, the older the home, less chances that you're gonna get full water damage coverage up to policy limits or that limited water damage coverage. There's also exclusions in what we call basic policies. So there's People's Trust offers their basic policy, which basically gives you dwelling coverage, hurricane coverage, and all other perils. There will be no water damage coverage for the within the home. That is what they call a basic policy. I would look into that, making sure you're taking a look at your personal contents. Are they covered at an actual cash value or full replacement costs? Right? You also have policies that offer limited liability. 100,000, is it 200,000 or 300,000? That's very big because the liability factor is for other people, especially if you're going to have a pool in your home. You want to make sure that you're protected. The best example that I provide my clients, if you're having a party, somebody slips and falls in that party, you can offer them medical payment coverage and help them out, maybe $2,000 or $5,000, depending on what your policy limits are. And then if they then decide to sue you, you have that liability coverage, whether it's $100,000, $200,000, or $300,000. Also, another big coverage is loss of use, is when you cannot reside in your home due to a catastrophic event or any type of claim that you're filing inside the home. So, for instance, we'll say there was a fire in the house and you can't reside in the home because there was a large loss. The insurance company will allow you to file a claim for loss of use, so you can get additional living expenses, things like groceries and a hotel to stay at, because you cannot physically reside in the property.
Very surprised when they find out what's not covered by their policy. What does a typical home insurance policy in Florida actually covers, and what does it cover?
The first thing that you're going to look for in your quote or in your policy is going to be your coverage A dwelling, is what the insurance companies will insure your property in case of a catastrophic event to be able to rebuild the home. So we would use the example of a 1,500 square foot home. It has a replacement cost of $300,000. The coverage A is what's going to replace that home. God forbid it's lost in a fire or it's lost in a hurricane. The second coverage is called coverage B, other structures. It provides coverage for things like a little shed that you have in the back, your fence. Then you go into coverage C, which is personal property. That is your personal property. And the best way that I explain it to homeowners, if you were to get your home in your hand, kind of flip it upside down, and when you jiggle it a little bit, all the things that fall out of the house is your personal property, like your televisions, your furniture, bed, things like that. You have to make sure with personal property, is it being covered at an actual cash value or full replacement costs. And I'll elaborate a little bit more. So if you buy a television worth $1,000, in 3 years, it's not worth $1,000 anymore. It's probably worth $200-300. That's actual cash value. So the insurance companies will cover that. And if it's not stated as full replacement cost, you'll know that you're getting actual cash value. So make sure that you ask that question. Is my personal property being covered at actual cash value or replacement cost?
What would you recommend to someone that has art pieces in their house, expensive watch?
Don't cover it through your homeowner's insurance. If you have, we'll take for instance a very expensive watch like a Rolex, okay? Usually homeowners insurance policies will only cover a maximum up to $2,500 for personal items like jewelry, watches, things like that. If you have a $10,000 Rolex, it's not going to be covered on your homeowner's insurance policy. Or if you have a piece of art that's valued at $10,000, $15,000, $20,000, that's not covered by homeowner's insurance. If I have a client that has those specifics, we will then tailor a separate policy to cover those specific artifacts, whether it's art, jewelry, engagement rings, watches, things like that. So we set up a standalone policy for those type of items.
Makes sense. I need to make very clear because we confuse that hurricane coverage and flood are the same.
So flood is a completely separate policy from your homeowner's insurance. Your homeowner's insurance policy, unless it has an endorsement that specifically states that they will cover flood losses, they are not included with your homeowner's insurance policy. You have to make sure, one of the number one questions that you ask your homeowner's insurance agent is flood included? 99% of the time they're gonna tell you no. So you'll have to purchase a separate policy in order for you to be able to get flood coverage. You have to remember that flood coverage is water that rises from outside into your home. So the difference is between in a hurricane, right? Your hurricane damage is gonna be covered under your hurricane deductible. And that water damage that comes from, let's say, that leaky roof is covered under your hurricane deductible. Now, if there's a lot of rain, you get damage and water comes from outside into your home, that's gonna be covered from flood. The rain that is covered is going to be covered under your all other perils. So you have to make sure when you're talking to your insurance agent that they explain to you about flood. Is it covered? How is your water damage going to be covered? If it's not from water that's coming into your home from outside, how is that going to be covered? Is that part of your policy? And then the differences in coverages between water damage from hurricane.
Basically, can you give a checklist if the homeowner is going to see their agent, what they absolutely have to ask?
The first thing I would talk about is what is the replacement cost of my home? How did you determine the replacement cost? Is it full replacement cost or actual cash value? Extremely important for you to know that. 2, what type of coverages are provided to me in my homeowner's insurance policy? Do I have coverage for personal property? Do I have loss of use coverage? Do I have liability medical payments? Do I have water damage coverage within the home? Is flood insurance included in my homeowner's insurance coverage, or do I have to purchase a separate policy? Do I have hurricane coverage? Here in the state of Florida, we need it. So do I have hurricane coverage? What are my deductibles? Is it 2%, 5%, 10%? And what is my deductible for my all other perils? All other perils are gonna be what you're gonna use for water damage, fire, things like that. So those are the key coverages that you wanna take a look at and discuss with your insurance agent.
Like we all know, hurricane season sneaks up very fast here in Florida. What are the top 3 things every homeowner should check in their policy before the storm season hits?
You need to make sure that your policy shows that you have hurricane coverage. Number 2, deductibles. What is my hurricane deductible? If there is a storm and damage happens to your home, you need to find out what percentage is going to be deducted from that check that the insurance company cuts for you. And number 3 would be what kind of protection discounts am I receiving in my homeowner's insurance policy. Here in Dade and Broward, the insurance companies require you to have AA1 hurricane protection that's shown on your wind mitigation inspection. This lets the insurance companies know that you either have impact rated windows, Miami-Dade stamped approved shutters that meet a criteria for you to be able to receive those discounts. So those are the top 3 things that you want to discuss with your agent right before hurricane season hits?
When I say before the storm season hits, what exactly is the time?
For hurricane season for insurance companies starts around April and May. You'll see a lot of insurance companies start to stop offering coverage in certain areas. So you have to see, where that's at, where your insurance carrier, if you're trying to shop your policy or if you're trying to purchase a new property, know that as we go getting closer to June, July, August, September, those are really big times for hurricanes. So you're going to see offers of hurricane coverage or offer of quotes or policies diminish as we get closer to those months.
I had a client that she bought the house cash, and they just starting to invest in Florida, so they are not so aware how things works in here. And because it was a cash deal, there is no obligation to have home insurance.
Exactly.
And they bought it and they went on a trip. I was like in panic because I didn't want to panic them as well, but they have to have insurance because the hurricane season was coming. And there was a situation that I would like to know exactly when the insurance stopped offering the coverage.
So if you, in the state of Florida, and the majority of underwriting guidelines for a lot of private market insurance companies, if you purchase a property, let's say May 1st, they're gonna give you 15 days to get homeowners insurance before you no longer qualify for them. Now, if you exceed those 15 days, are there options? Yes, there are. You have Citizens, which will allow you up to 45 days from the day that you purchased the property to be able to get the homeowner's insurance with an immediate activation date. If you don't do it within those 45 days, they give you a mandatory 30-day waiting period before the policy will be active. So you wait those 45 days. Now you have to wait an additional 30 days for your policy to become active. So you have no coverage in between those 30 days.
So that was, this is impressive details, right? The case of this client, they bought a new construction. So also the delivery time was fluctuating. And then at the time that they were able to close, they were on the cruise for 30 days.
Oh, wow.
So, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah, it's
me as a professional have to advise and take care of my clients, but it was like very critical situation. Had so many pieces moving. The construction was going to deliver on time, and when was that? And also the limited communication that I had at the time.
So if it is a brand new construction home, we do have insurance carriers that will allow you to be able to get a policy in the private market, not Citizens, the government program, in the private market, that will allow you to be able to access a policy, but expect surcharges from them. And not all insurance carriers, specifically the admitted ones that are backed by FIGA, which is the Financial Insurance Guarantee Association, they will add on some additional fees. I don't want people to get scared that it's immediate requirement. If you're doing a cash deal, there is a little bit of leeway there. It's extremely important that you communicate this with your insurance agent and make sure that your insurance agent has these available options for you to be able to do that. Because there's a lot of smaller insurance agencies that have very limited options. John Galt Insurance, we actually have almost every carrier here in the state of Florida, with the exception of a few, and we are able to facilitate and get homeowners insurance even if a person has a lapse in insurance. But again, not everybody has that option, so it's good for you to have that conversation with your agent when you're purchasing your property, or you know that there's gonna be a time frame there where there's some uncertainties, right, of when you're gonna be able to close, when the home's gonna become available to you.
What are the most common insurance mistakes people make right before the hurricane?
One of the more common mistakes is not having an active policy. With the craziness of insurance, sometimes people think that they have a policy and it's expired, it was never paid. So the first thing you want to do when you're getting into hurricane season, let's say in April and May, call your agent, make sure your policy is active. Without an active policy, it will become problematic for you.
I can say that happened because one of my insurance is supposed to be automatically charged, and nobody knows how to explain how specifically in that month that I needed was not paid.
Wow, this is something that happens more often than not. And we see this in our industry a ton. I'll give you an example. You'll have a client that just purchased a property, has a mortgage on there, and within the first month, that mortgage is sold to another mortgage company. which changes the loan number, in many cases can also change the lien holder. But a client or a customer, just went through the process, is provided the information. I'm sure they mail it out to them and things like that, but kind of throws it to the side or puts it to the side because in their mind, it's going to be taken care of, and it's not. And we as homeowners insurance agents and brokers have to be provided this information so we can update it in your policy. Policies are good for 1 year, right? Within that 1 year, very little communication. You don't notify your agent that your policy, that your lien holder information or your mortgage company changed. And then they go to bill it, and they bill it to the old loan number, they bill it to the old mortgage company, and it doesn't get paid out. Now, there is a time frame here in the state of Florida, which I believe is 90 days for your payment to be sent in by the mortgage company after your renewal date. But if we're not notified and there's no communication there, your policy will be canceled. And then you're going to be put with a force-placed insurance by the mortgage company, and it turns into an end. You won't have any coverage. So what I tell my clients is our brokerage notifies them when their renewal is coming 45 days, has anything changed on there, and about 90% of the time, it's a completely different loan number, a completely different mortgage company. So it's good to be able to have that constant communication with your agent.
Would you say take pictures and videos of your home before the season hits is important?
Oh, yes, definitely. So around April and May, I do an assessment of my home. I go around, I take a look at tiles, I take a look at the windows, things like that, and I start taking pictures. So that way, God forbid something happens to the home, I have documentation on, hey, look, this is what it looked like before. And now when the guy comes to assess the damage, I can provide him that information. I also keep receipts of newly purchased items because if my personal property does get damaged, like I have a 100-inch television, right? It costs me a lot of money, and I want to make sure that they have the value of that piece of personal property that I purchased, and they have documentation. Oh, look, here's the receipt. This is what I paid for it. That's what I want back for it.
I'm carrying a home insurance, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then if I renovate my flooring, which was before like those 50s, that is a good one. But of course, you want something more modern, sure, right? And then I spend tons of money. Do I have to report?
We're going to use an example for your floorings. If you do change the floorings, you want to make sure that you notify your insurance agent, because your floorings are part of the replacement cost of your home. Now, if you went from, let's say, regular tile to marble, that's a huge increase, expensive. So that will increase the replacement cost of your home. So if there is damage, your marble does get damaged, you want to make sure that it's replaced correctly, because it's already part of your homeowner insurance policy.
And I've seen people that want to get that reported because if the event happens, you want to be paid out correctly.
Correct.
Same time, people don't want the premium goes up. Mm-hmm. So everything that they do in a house, they try not to report.
Yes.
So they can continue paying low. What do you say about that?
Is
it a smart move?
No, it's not a smart move, because again, insurance is there to make you whole again, right? And you put that money into your home to make it nicer, to bring the value up. You want to make sure that it's protected correctly. So you do want to make sure that when you make a change that's significant in your home, that you notify your homeowner's insurance agent and kind of discuss what options are going to be available for you in adding that increase to that policy.
Let's shift the gears now and talk about numbers. What is considered a normal home insurance premium right now in Florida?
Well, Michelle, that's a very loaded question, because there is a lot of factors that go into what people pay. Okay, I'll start off with new construction. On an average 1,500 square foot home with a replacement value of $300,000 to $400,000, the premium can be anywhere between $800 to $1,500 a year. Get away from new construction and let's go to a home, we'll say here in Miami, 1,500 square feet, but was built in 1972, right? It's an older home with let's say it has a 10-year-old shingle roof. We're gonna say it has full hurricane protection. That means all the doors, the windows, the garage door, they're all either impact rated or have some kind of protection that meets Miami-Dade criteria. That policy can be anywhere between $3,500 up to $6,000. That is the average. And it does fluctuate in the entire state of Florida. Our franchises are throughout the entire state at John Galt. We deal with different areas. The coastal areas that are surrounded right by the water are gonna be a lot more expensive than homeowners insurance inland, 20, 30 miles inland. because the exposure to the hurricane is far greater when you're on the coastline than you are inland.
And we're talking about single-family homes, right?
Correct. Single-family homes, townhouses, that's another tricky situation here in Florida because a lot of townhouses might be covered under a master commercial policy that is covered by the association, and some townhomes are not, which are considered, you have to get HO3s, and HO3 is a policy that covers the walls, the structure, the roof, all of that. Then you have associations that cover the walls, the structure, everything, and so you only have to get an HO6. So prices are gonna vary based on age of roof, age of home, and location.
And what about condos?
Condominiums are what we call HO6s. So let's say that we'll use a high-rise, for example.
Yeah.
The older the condominium, the pricier it's gonna be. We'll use a Brickell condo. I just insured in 2 different areas. 1972 built building, 1974, and then 2007. The 2007 premium, it was a 1,200 square foot unit, 2-bedroom, average. It was a policy of $1,800. That provided them $100,000 in dwelling coverage, which is walls and insurance. Everything from the walls inward is what that policy is going to cover. And it had a hurricane deductible associated, which is $500 deductible for hurricane, $500 for all other perils. Now, in the same area location, for the older building, $100,000 as well, and about the same square footage, I think it was 1,300 square feet. That was a $2,800 policy. And that came with $500 deductibles. And it also included a hurricane discount because it had impact rated windows. So you see there, the age difference is what made a huge difference in premium. And they're both on the coast. They're both what we call within the wind pool, which is Citizens created this thing with that you're in the wind pool, which 2 miles or closer in many areas to the coast puts you in the wind pool. The wind pool is where you see the most damage happen when a hurricane hits.
You made it clear that hurricane coverage and flood coverage are totally different. We know that now for condos, the high-rise is mandatory. Exactly which one it is mandatory?
Well, mandatory is gonna be associated with, do you have a mortgage on the property, right? So they're gonna want you to carry hurricane coverage.
Hurricane, okay.
Right? And then what your association covers. The master policy that's provided by the association is gonna cover usually the structure and the roof, right, of the condominium. If there is a hurricane, and let's just say you decide not to go with a hurricane coverage on your policy, if those windows break and there's damage inside of your unit, you're responsible for that because you decided not to go. Now your association is not gonna help you pay for it. You're gonna have to pay. You're gonna be held liable for your own damages. And I know a lot of associations now, with the structures that are being made in insurance and with the older buildings, a lot of them are gonna want you to have some type of policy on there for hurricane, for hazard, things like that. So it's really good to, when you're purchasing a condominium, that you have your insurance agent take a look at the master policy to see what's covered and what's not covered, so you know exactly where you're gonna have to start taking care of your area, your living area.
Some of my clients are paying double that the neighborhood is paying, and they don't know why. Can you please tell me what is the biggest factor that affect home insurance premiums?
There's no one policy that's alike, okay? So if your neighbor, let's say, is paying $5,000 and you're paying $7,000, we gotta understand what coverages your neighbor has and what discounts are being applied to his policy. It could be that he's getting a full hurricane protection discount. There's also huge factors that go into what holds your roof to your structure of your home. We find this in the wind mitigation inspection. When we ask a homeowner to shop their policies, the number one things that we're gonna ask for is a 4-point inspection and a wind mitigation inspection. The wind mitigation inspection shows us what holds the roof to the structure of the home, whether it's toenails, whether it's a clip, whether it's a single wrap or double wraps. These are huge factors, because if it's just nails that are holding the roof to the structure of the home, it makes it easier for that roof to fly off in a hurricane. Now, if you have a what they call a clip, which is a piece of metal that has 2 and 3 screw nails on it that holds the roof to the structure of the home, that's a discount. If you have a single wrap, which is a piece of metal that goes over the truss, with 2 nails on one side and 3 on the other, that's a discount. And when you have double of those, that's another discount. And those are huge. And when I mean huge, those are discounts that can be anywhere between $5 to up to $2,000, depending on the homeowner's insurance carrier that offers that discount. That's one part of that wind mitigation inspection. Then you have what type of plywood, thickness of it. That's huge. You also have a SWR, which is a secondary water resistance, like a film, a plastic film that's put on top of the plywood, which if the water does come into the roof, through the shingles, through the tiles, through the piece of metal, it actually hits that plastic and it kind of rolls down. So that's a discount that you receive. And then the biggest discount is gonna be what type of hurricane protection do you have in the home? Whether it's impact rated windows, whether it's sliding shutters that are stamped Miami-Dade approved, because they have to have a little stamp that meets Miami-Dade guidelines, because Miami-Dade guidelines for hurricane is the guideline for that's being used throughout the entire United States. So you have to make sure they're impact rated, and that's how you do it. Is your garage door impact rated? Is your sliding doors impact rated? Or do you have something that covers them that is impact rated? That is the biggest discount, and that can be anywhere between $1,500 to up to $5,000, depending on the carrier.
I believe you heard this many times because nobody wants to be uninsured, but saving money will help a lot. How can someone lower the insurance premium without putting themselves at risk?
It's a great question. So the number one thing is you want to make sure that you get with a broker that has a lot of different options for you. So if you already have an existing policy, about 45 days prior to your renewal, you want to make sure that you're shopping your policy. If you made any updates on your home, like a new roof, you added hurricane protection, you want to make sure that you get the wind mitigation inspection, so that way you can get those credits applied to your homeowner's insurance policy. Now, when going into your policy, and if you need to save money and you need to cut down on costs, then you can lower things like your other structures coverage. You can eliminate personal property from your homeowner's insurance policy. Those are typically what homeowners will do. But if you really need to lower the cost of your homeowner's insurance after you've applied all the discounts, you can also provide discounts for having an alarm system, central monitoring station. That can give you a reasonable discount, not something in the thousands, but it's maybe a couple $100 depending on your homeowner's insurance carrier. You can also raise deductibles. Now, I don't recommend raising deductibles. I like the lowest deductibles possible because it's gonna be a matter of time when you need to use your homeowner's insurance. And if you have a $500,000 home with a 5% hurricane deductible, that's gonna be a big chunk of change that's removed from the check that's cut out to you by the insurance company. But raising your deductibles can also help lower your homeowner's insurance coverage. Make sure you have that conversation with your agent to see what best fits for you.
I've seen a lot of buyers losing their closing date or have to push. It's like a nightmare because they wait too long to shop for home insurance while they're doing the process of purchase.
Just like we've had deals in the past, you and I, the number one thing that you and I always discuss is preparing for a client. And the way that we prepare for a client, like in our last deal together, is we went ahead and as you were showing the client the home, you were on the phone with me. You had given me the address. So what we do is we run preliminary quotes. We also run flood locations and provide a flood quote. This is gonna allow the homeowner not to have to wait during the inspection period to be able to rush and get a quote. No, we've already prepared a preliminary quote, and as a good insurance agent, we have a lot of tools to be able to help us get some preliminary quotes. The number one factors into what finalizing a quote is the home inspection, the wind mitigation and 4-point, right? Because that lets us know the risk.
Because you were able to at least give me the worst scenario, and then we can play with those numbers.
Correct.
So, but most of the insurance companies don't do the preliminary, but it's so important to the buyers.
Absolutely, absolutely. It can make or break a deal. And many times here in Florida, where the insurance breaks the deal. So by you having a set number prior to getting those inspections will help the mortgage broker, help facilitate his part, his underwriting, will help the homeowner understand, okay, this is what worst case scenario I'm gonna be paying. Now we also know, is the home located in a flood zone and how much flood insurance is gonna cost.
What is the advice would you give it to the buyers during the hurricane season?
Communication is key in everything. and in every deal we do. So if you're set to schedule to close May 1st, things happen and now we have to push it to May 3rd. Communication is going to be key. You want to let your insurance agent know right away, listen, we've already locked in this rate, I want to maintain it. So can we push the closing? There's many cases, the insurance carrier, all they need is a notification, a written letter letting them know it's been pushed out, maybe a change in the addendum in the contract. We can go ahead, submit it over to them, so that way they change now the schedule starting date from the 1st to the 30th. The reason you want to do that and not say nothing is because once we start getting into May, June, July, like we discussed before, capacity with private market insurance companies starts to dwindle down, which means that policy, that quote that was offered to you in May 1st closing, it's not going to be the same or might not even be available for that May 30th closing. Mm-hmm. So the communicating with your agent, letting them know, hey, look, this changed, can help you keep that rate and be able to continue moving forward in the transaction.
We've seen a lot of sellers that they have to change the whole strategy because selling their property, but they also depend on another purchase or to go somewhere else. And then a lot of the times happen that the seller needs to do the post-occupancy, remains on the property, and then this whole thing also, or a lot of the time gotta push back the closing. So you're saying communications is key. How does the home insurance affect the mortgage, and what lenders care so much in Florida?
Well, it affects the mortgage because 99% of the time, your homeowner's insurance policy is escrowed through your loan. So you know there's gonna, like, taxes are escrowed through your loan in many cases. Your homeowners will be too, so that's going to put an impact on how much you pay on a monthly basis, you know, for your mortgage. Now, the reason that lenders require it is because they are giving you a set amount of money, they're lending you a certain amount of money to purchase a property. So they want to make sure that that investment that they're buying into is protected, and that's where the homeowners insurance comes in place. Because here in the state of Florida, homeowners insurance will only cover the replacement cost of the home. Well, Michelle, in closing, we want to make sure that we elaborate to our clients and future clients. They understand to communicate with their insurance agent. Communication with the realtor is extremely important. Making sure you get those preliminary quotes. Getting all of this done is going to help make the closing process a lot smoother for our clientele. I appreciate you, Michelle, for having me on today. Thank you so much. If you ever need any of your clients need anything else, please feel free to contact me. I'm a 24/7 guy. Realtors work 24/7 weekends, and we try to make ourselves available. My name is Christian Hervia with John Galt Insurance. You can reach me directly at 786-487-6580. That's my direct number. You can text me there, call me pretty much anytime. I'm always available. And you can always reach me directly at christian.hervia@johngaltinsurance.com.
Thank you so much for you to be here, give you your afternoon for this. I really, really appreciate it.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for having me, Michelle. Thank you.
If you got any value from this video, don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe, and share with anyone that loves real estate. And right now, if you have any questions or need a personalized advice, you can schedule a direct Zoom call with me through the link in the description. See you in the next video.